someone with those kinds of powers, the most powerful person in the world, with the greatest amount of authority, could go into office knowing that there would be no potential penalty for committing crimes. I'm trying to understand what the disincentive is from turning the Oval Office into, the seat of criminal activity in this country.
The Oval Office as the seat of criminal activity in this country? Words so chilling and haunting coming out of the mouth of Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson at last week's oral arguments over Donald Trump's claim of absolute immunity for the presidency. Several of the conservative justices seemed primarily concerned about the possibility of future bad faith prosecutions against ex-presidents and asked questions about how that could harm their ability to make difficult decisions required by the presidency, something that's literally never happened. The irony is that it is the ex-president himself, the only person who's talking about going after former presidents should he be elected to a second term. According to a new interview in Time magazine, Donald Trump has, quote, vowed to appoint a real special prosecutor to go after Joe Biden. Trump suggests President Biden's fate may be tied to an upcoming Supreme Court ruling on whether presidents can face criminal prosecution for acts they committed in office. Quote, if they said that a president doesn't get immunity, says Trump, then Biden, I'm sure, will be prosecuted for all of his crimes. We should note that President Joe Biden hasn't been charged with any crimes, nor has the House Republican investigation into him ever turned up any evidence of wrongdoing exciting enough to keep them investigating him. Joining our coverage, former federal judge Michael Luttig. Judge, you were prescient. You were sitting at this table when the Supreme Court agreed to hear Donald Trump's claim of complete immunity. That was after the Supreme Court had rejected Jack Smith's request to hear this argument. Everything that you predicted has come to pass. And so we want to put you on the spot and ask you what happens now.
Thank you for having me with you this afternoon, Nicole. It's always a pleasure. Nicole, since the founding of the nation almost 250 years ago, and the ratification of the Constitution and establishment of the Supreme Court until this day, there's never even been a suggestion, much less an argument, that a president of the United States could be immune from prosecution for offenses against the United States of America that he or she commits while in office. The Constitution itself doesn't even mention immunity for a president of the United States. And immunity for the president of the United States, and certainly absolute immunity of the kind that the former president is arguing for, is anathema to the Constitution of the United States. Now, the former president, of course, is the first president in American history ever to be charged with crimes or offenses against the United States of America. And he is arguing and argued before the Supreme Court of the United States this past week that he is entitled to absolute immunity from prosecution by the United States government for the offenses that he allegedly committed in attempting to overturn the 2020 presidential election, remain in power, notwithstanding the votes of the American people, all the while preventing for the first time in American history the peaceful transfer of power. The argument, in my view, for absolute immunity is preposterous, but it appears clear to observers of the court during last week's argument that some members of the court, if not the entire court, is tempted by the question presented by the former president. Namely, is it possible that the former president should have absolute immunity for the specific offenses that he committed in attempting to overturn the 2020 presidential election? It's very hard to decide from argument and the comments made by the justices where the court might be going. But in this case, there seemed to be a consensus from court watchers that the court will remand the case to the trial court for a determination of which of the specific acts charged against the former president were undertaken in his official capacity as President of the United States, and which were undertaken in his private or personal or candidate capacity, if you will. If I received that remand, I wouldn't have a clue where even to begin in distinguishing between these acts and which were taken in the official capacity and which were taken in the former president's private or personal capacity.